Welcome to the water cooler. Today, we'll be talking about Battle Royale. Not Battle Royale games that are all popular amongst them whippersnappers today, but Battle Royale the movie, which I believe, Paul, you have just finished watching, haven't you?
It is so fresh in my brain box right now. Yes, I just finished it. I haven't even said a peep to you, but I'm
First
about
time
to.
though, right? Like this is the first time you've ever seen it?
Yes, my Battle Royale cherry is no more.
Did you know of the movie beforehand?
I really didn't. I'm not sure how this flew under the radar for me, but you recommended it. I asked a close mate of mine if he had seen it. He loved it too, and that's it. That's all I knew.
Perfect. Let's talk about Battle Royale, the movie. All right, so I have been watching this movie many times since probably about 2003 ish, early 2000s. Movie came out in 2000. Took me a little bit to get to it because, I think it was, I don't know if it was ever officially released in North America, at least not into theaters. So it took a while for the reputation of the movie to spread out this way. And then, I heard about it for a little bit before finally watching it. I was really into a lot of more foreign cinema at the time, especially from Japan and Korea and China. They were really coming into their own around that time. Um, and, in some cases like China, they were really coming into their own a bit earlier, but, we'll not get into that right now. So I've been watching this movie for quite a long time. For a very long time, I've defined it as being my favorite action movie of all time. So I'm very, very excited and curious to hear what you have to say about it. In case you couldn't tell, if you didn't like it, I will destroy you.
This is a tiny cynical little bastard inside of me that almost hoped I didn't, just so everyone could hear you screaming at me as I screamed at Jones in the fast lane that one time. Um, but unfortunately, I loved it. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I was aware after you told me, Google it, asked me, mate, etc. I was aware that it was some sort of a cult classic. So I was. And I trust your taste. So I was basically trying to say I was aware that I probably should like it,
Mm,
which was a good thing because that made my expectations really high. And whenever you have high expectations and they're met or exceeded, then it's truly, truly something special. And this
right.
was.
Now, I did ask you about it, and you did kind of look it up real quick, and which I generally, when I recommend this movie to people, I tell them not to look it up. I tell them, like, go in as blind as you can. As much as I loved it, knowing what the premise was, I think that there's just that added little bit of extra experience in the very beginning if you don't know where it's going, and then it just hits you. Again, I'm going to take this moment to cue into saying to all of our listeners, if you have not seen Battle Royale the movie, uh, go into it knowing as little as you can. Some of you by now already know what it's about, but if you don't look it up. Just go in, just fly blind, just take just take our recommendation, watch it. I won't necessarily guarantee you'll like it, but I don't think I know anyone who doesn't like it. I hope that doesn't overbuild it to you, but trust me, your best shot, in a worst case scenario, your best shot of liking it will be to go in blind.
Yeah. So exactly, kind of a spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it, put this on ice and maybe come back.
Oh yeah, this will
Um,
be all
you
the
know,
spoilers. We're going to talk about
yeah.
everything that happens, I'm sure.
So if you haven't seen it, what are you doing here? Get out. I'm not your mom. I can't say. If I was your mom, I'd say don't hit your brother or something. But I'm
Yeah.
not. So you can do what you want, but we suggest you don't.
Yes.
And also don't hit your brother. It's not cool. Um, no, this movie was amazing. I can see why you say it's best to look up or know as little as possible. And luckily, when I looked it up, I was mostly just trying to find what the cover looked like, so I could find it in an online store or whatever. So I didn't actually read about it, which was good. But what I was gonna
Mm.
say, this movie kind of reminds me, now that I've seen it through, reminds me of or what you're trying to say reminds me of almost like a walkthrough with a game. This movie was a cool little brain exercise to kind of piece together some deeper meaning, and I feel like if you were to look it up or learn too much about it, it would be like a walkthrough, and it would kind of spoil. It would walk you through what's going on as opposed to really having to think about it, which I don't know if that's because I'm daft, but I did, after it was over, I had to sit there for like 5 minutes with like, popcorn over my lap and crumbs looking like a slob trying to figure out what just happened. And I think I got a grasp on it. We'll touch on that, but it was
I mean,
awesome.
there is a bit of a giveaway in the name. It says Battle Royale, which is kind of a spoiler in and of itself. But at the same time, I think, there are a lot of people who I have had watch this movie, and quite a few of them, I actually made sure that they went in blind. Like, I gave them the DVD and said, don't read the cover. Do not find out anything about this. Just watch it. And I think a lot of it is because there is just that little, it's just so out there, but in a grounded way. It's not like out there, but it commits to its premise so much that if you don't know what it's going into, it's kind of hard to believe that that's where they're going with it. It's like you kind of don't think, you can't imagine anybody would really go in that direction with this story, and that's where they go.
It is full Tarantino.
Yeah, we're going to go into like the full-on spoilers here, so you've been warned. The premise, as all of you know because you've seen it, is about high school kids. I think it was like grade 9 or 10 is the age of the characters, that get abducted, thrown onto an island, equipped with either weapons or random pieces of equipment or items, and just told to kill each other until one is left. And there's a little bit more than that, but not really a whole lot more, but also way more. Like, it's just, I can't even, I don't even know how to really get it all out, because so much wants to come out of me in all at once right now in terms of explaining this movie.
Yes, God, I know I kind of hesitant on where to start too. I guess I'll start by just expanding on what you just said. That they done an awesome job in the architecture of the story to make sure there was no way out. Right? There's sectors on the island. If you're in a sector at the wrong time, you'll get blown up. So they filled in all the potential plot holes. There are none. They filled them all in saying, well, if you all just decide not to die, well, then at the end, the collars go off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going into that, but we didn't even mention collars yet. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this one.
Yeah. Everyone has collars. They will die if you tamper with them. They're meant to track you and to monitor if you're alive or dead. If you're in, there's danger zones that activate. I don't know how much this is already familiar to people who've played Battle Royale games, because I never played a Battle Royale game. And we're going to touch on the Battle Royale games just in a little bit, but I don't know what you need or don't need explained to you. But yeah, there are danger zones that come up, as you know, because you've seen the movie. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if you've seen the movie. So basically, they just keep it going. They just keep forcing these people into fighting each other to make sure that if there isn't one last survivor at the end of 3 days, then they will all die.
Right, exactly.
So I think it's pretty clear. Like, yeah, I know it seems like a pretty unpredictable movie, and in a lot of ways it kind of is. But I think it was pretty clear from the beginning which characters would make it to the end. But are there any characters that you particularly rooted for or kind of really wanted to make it, other than like the two main protagonists?
I guess during the film, it was kind of all three of them. I think I took a shine to Kawata, who is the third member with the yellow bandana for anyone who needs a visual in the mind real quick. Just because he was so compassionate, and it was such a contrast, obviously, to everything that was going on. And I did suspect, obviously, that he was going to turn on them. But as the film went on, I kind of started doubting that would happen. And then, spoiler, obviously, he did, but he didn't. And so it was just that was just one of the many roller coasters of this film. They ran like 5 parallel twists at the same time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was, to answer your question. Sorry, I went on too long. To answer your question, I kind of like Kawata the most because of his compassion. I liked his backstory with the girl. Obviously, it was really fascinating that he chose to be in this game. Basically seeking more answers than victory. So I thought he was a cool character. How about you?
Well, first of all, just to talk about Kawata for a second. I actually, I don't want to say I was disappointed. Nothing in this movie disappointed me, except that I was really kind of hoping that the two transfer students would both be villains. rather than one of them would be a good guy. I kind of just wanted, like, we knew the two main protagonists. I was just hoping that both of the stranger characters were just going to be like psychotic killers or something like that. So that's the only thing that it worked out for the best. Obviously, worked out way better than if they had actually gone the way I was kind of hoping it to go. But there was that part of me that just sort of thought, like, oh man, these two badasses, these are going to be like the two bosses of the whole
Right.
thing, right?
And by the way, the other one, not the other boss
Kiriyama.
level guy, yeah, thank you. He's really convincing as a psychopath.
Yeah.
I mean, from his very first shot, where he's kind of chin down, eyes up, into a shadowy light, all throughout the rest of the film, he portrays an awesome screw loose kind of character.
Mm-hmm. But for favorite character, and it's kind of funny, over the years, I've asked quite a few people who've seen the movie who their favorite character was. Not necessarily who they think would win, because, that's relatively obvious who is going to win, but just who your favorite character was. And everyone had, within the same, like, 5 to 6 to maybe, like, same 10, within the same 10 characters. But people had different favorites. Mine was actually Mitsuko, or Mitsuko. I don't know how to pronounce the U's in Japanese, because sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. But basically, she's like the one student of the actual class that's actually trying to win the game.
Yes,
and she's the one who goes around killing everyone up until as much as Kiriyama was pretty well. Like, they're obviously being built up as almost equal in terms of the competition.
Yes, that was actually literally my second choice. I felt like Shuya and Noriko were kind of just so supposed to be the favorites that I tended looked outside, and I loved her because. Well, before her backstory, I'll take a step back. I loved what you just said, that she was all game. Like the best part of her character development was when they show that shot in the first morning they wake up there, and she's just calmly putting on makeup.
Yeah.
Like that was awesome. It almost gave me like chills. I'm like, this girl's fucking mental. Like she's just calmly like making sure she looks real good to go do murders, and that just showed how confident and like cold she could be. And yeah, like you said, I loved how she was just well into it. Like just I'm gonna survive. And it's weird because like if I didn't have anyone, let's say in this scenario, I'd like to think I was like her. Like, look, this is what it is. We're not killing ourselves. We're not going to panic and cry. We're going to survive. We have to. And she embodied that. And then when you learn about her backstory with her father or stepfather, undressing this doll that has her name. And then he says, well, now it's the real Mitsuko's turn. It was just disgusting. You completely understood at that point why she was a bit of a loner, which also was reflected in the Requiem at the end. Everyone's cheering at a basketball game, and she just kind of, falls into the background.
Right, so this is where it gets kind of interesting. This is actually where it gets kind of interesting, because you clearly saw the director's cut of this movie, which is actually, yes. I have not seen the director's cut of this movie. So we're actually going to be talking a little bit on a slightly different page here. Because my favorite, I'm aware of some of these scenes, so you're not spoiling anything for me. Because I was pretty obsessed with Battle Royale for a while after seeing it, so I am aware of a lot of these scenes that you're referring to. But those two, like especially the backstory, those are not given in the original release. Like she is just, and that's why she's my favorite. Because as far as anyone knows, she is just a kid in the class with nothing exceptional about her except that she's the one who decided to win.
Right. That's so interesting. So yeah, you would have a complete, not completely, but definitely a varying opinion of her, because she never strayed from being just a cold-blooded killer. They didn't humanize her in the regular cut.
Yeah.
Right, and that's interesting. See, I could see your perception almost being superior, because that is such a cool, aspect, like just a survivor, through and through. But I will say they waited so long in the film before they show you that cutback to her childhood that I kind of got to go through both emotions, where I rooted for her as just a survivor, and then once I heard the backstory, I just kind of doubled down. I'm like, oh, well, go get him, girl. Like, yeah, fuck him up. Like, trust no one. Go.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I mean, and I hear a lot of people say that. And I know a lot of people prefer the director's cut. I know a lot of people prefer the book. I don't know very many people who've read the full manga, but I heard people do like that too. I did read the book, and I think there is a lot taken. The book does expand on her backstory a lot. It expands on the backstories of like everybody, pretty much, and that's why I actually consider the movie to be a superior experience for me over the book, because I think that uh, a lot of people, and to each their own, a lot of people want more answers, and that's what the book gives them. And the director's cut, to some extent, will also give more answers about why people are doing what they do. Whereas for me, I think probably also fueled by the fact that they filmed these scenes, so they did have that backstory that they're working from, even if they ended up getting cut out. So they came across as very complete, rounded characters, even if I didn't know who they were or what was informing their decisions. So it was everything was left to my imagination to just sort of fill in the blanks in my head. Not even filling the blanks, but just sort of like just observing the end product of here's 3 days of these characters that have lived their entire lives, that have years of relationship built up between each other, and it all comes down to, okay, now you have to kill each other. What do you do? And I just think that I just think the mystique of it all, especially the mystique of Mitsuko, and just the mystique of the story, just it was so much more emphasized by having little bits of information unknown.
Right. No, I could absolutely see why. Because, like you said, you get to play around in your imagination a little bit and wonder what breeds that type of person. Because I specifically had that thought during the film, um, quite early on, where two of the children decide that they're not going to play the game, and they throw themselves over a cliff, commit suicide. And I did take a second after that scene to just stop and think, like, what kind of surroundings create a child that would just rather fold and take their lives as opposed to try. And
Mm-hmm.
it was it's quite a kind of trip. I mean, maybe even psychologically speaking, it could be because I have a child. Am I like asking myself, like, how do I how do I raise him to never give up like that, for fuck's sake? I
Yeah.
mean, give it a shot, mate. But so anyway, I got a slice of your experience with the earlier back characters that they don't go into, to be able to relate to what you're saying, where like for those kids that committed suicide, they didn't cover their backstory. So I got what you got from the whole film, with the regular cut, where you get to kind of imagine it, and it was well cool.
Mm-hmm. And there are definitely characters that were just sort of like, oh, that there's no point. Let's just die together. I think, to answer your question, I think there's a lot of people who just kind of like they just want their destiny to be in their own hands, and they just don't want to play into like the whole, okay, they're making us do this. Well, screw them. We're not going to play their game, right?
All right. See, well, that's interesting because the first part of that I had already kind of thought that, like, controlling their own destiny, and thinking at it probably more as a parent, where I'm like, raising this kid. What would I do for him in this situation? Because we're all mental when you have kids. Everything's terrifying. Um, and I kind of just decided, well, taking fate in your own hands is telling yourself you're gonna win and making sure you do, whether or
Right.
not you do. As opposed to, I'll die my way. It's like, well, don't die at all. It's, take it in your hands and win. But you you just brought up a secondary point that I didn't think of, which is the rebellious nature of that, where it's like, I'm not gonna play the game, and this is my fuck you to that. So that's really interesting.
The limitations of the movie, especially the time restrictions, I think really helped it, because they trimmed a lot of fat. Like watching it, the last few times I've watched this movie, and especially now that I knew that I had to talk about it, um, there's really pretty much every death that happens in the movie, unless it's like a quick, like 2-second cut. Anything that's actually given time in the movie is in service of story, plot, or character.
Mm-hmm. You're
And
right.
there's no false step. There's no like, oh, this happened just because. Like, everything had to happen because there wasn't time to cover things that aren't important. So everything was, even things that seem a little bit particularly the one with all the girls in the was it like the lighthouse or like the big tower or something like that, and they're all
Yeah,
friends, but
the
then they end
poison
up,
incident.
yeah, with the poison scene. Um, Even that was kind of like, oh, I did have a few viewings where I'm like, well, did that need to happen? I'm kind of like, well, you know what? That was a really important scene in terms of setting the mood and the tone of the movie. Like, sure, it happens like halfway through, so it's already kind of set, but it keeps it going. It's like it shows these characters who are friends. You know, they're all getting along, they're laughing and joking, and they're all good friends that, you know, don't want to play the game. Uh, Cause and effect, very important in any movie, because the one girl saw Shuya kill her friend earlier on. She's one of them, and that's why she's motivated to try to kill Shuya with the poison. Through a misunderstanding, one of the other girls eats the dish and dies, and suddenly, like, all that friendship just snaps, and they're just like, because they don't know who it was for, so they just think that somebody there was like, no, I'm going to fucking win. And they're like, okay, now it's on. We're going to do this. Who the hell just did that? And, you know, and it just, everything implodes. And I think that was actually a really important scene to show just how fragile everyone's relationships and emotions are in that situation. And rightfully so. And that's another thing that really gets me about a lot of movies these days, is that stakes don't really feel as high as they do in something like Battle Royale, or even like plenty of movies well before it. But I find like a lot of modern thrillers, everything is just taken so calmly and casually. This movie really sells the emotion behind every moment that happens in scene by scene.
Yeah, no, you're right. A lot of the modern movies have a feel of like, well, this is supposed to happen in this kind of movie. Whereas this didn't even feel like a movie. It was, you're just observing what would happen in this scenario, and that scene was really important. First of all, it was kind of like there's a specific Tarantino scene I have in mind that I can't put a film on. May or may not precede this. I'm kind of guessing not. Where basically the whole room ends up dead in a few seconds because of their inability to communicate their problems and fears. But
that's a lot of
really
Tarantino
cool,
scenes.
that's true, yeah. That's probably why I can't pick one. But so, anyways, it's just a cool Tarantino moment. But what I loved about that was that it really highlighted. It was important to show what close friends would do in that situation, which the film doesn't get a whole lot of time to do, especially with the protagonist surviving. But also, I thought it highlighted like how an adolescent brain would handle it.
Yeah,
there's just so much panic and poor choices, and realistic poor choices, and just how no one's able to calm the situation. It's just a very adolescent scene that plays out exactly how I would think it would, with everyone dead.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what they call in professional wrestling selling. They sell the story, like they keep you in, they make it believable, so that it sells the story to you, and it sells the emotion, it sells the premise.
Yes, and they never threw a murder away. There was no just like, hey, there's a lot of kids, we're gonna have to kill them off, here we go. Like all the murders, all the deaths that they showed, really pretty, that I can think of right now, represented something. Even the girls calling for like a revolution with the loudspeaker, like, let's try this angle. Somebody would try and be like, hey, let's stand together. I mean, even though the collars don't come off and they'll blow up at the end, I kept thinking that. I'm like, come on, man, you're not gonna. But
literally the only deaths that were thrown away were literally just like 2 seconds. Like they just covered it in quick snaps. Like, okay, these two died over here. Let's move on. Like they didn't spend any time on anything that was just kind of like just trimming the herd.
And sorry, real quick, as gamers, like, I think we both probably have a tendency to look at some of these things sometimes like tactically. So that was fascinating too. And my example, real quick, is I think the first death was the bigger kid. Just straight out the gate, like everyone runs and scatters, but this one kid's like, I'm not going to scatter. I'm going to pick them off as they come out the door. And I thought that was brilliant. Like that's, if you ever played like co-ops with anybody, there's always, he was basically a camper.
Spawn camper,
And so even that quick throwaway death, it was actually kind of important because I want to see how everybody would do this. There's campers,
it covers the ground of what people would do logically in that situation.
Exactly. Exactly.
The other really standout change that was made between the book and the movie, which I fully support, because like I said, any changes I'm generally going to be favoring the movie, because I just think the movie was pretty damn close to perfect. That's why it's my favorite action movie of all time. A big change is that Kiriyama in the book is one of the classmates, whereas in the movie he was a volunteer who just wanted to do it for the laughs, or not the laughs literally, but he's just so psycho. He was just like, yeah, I want to do this, and he just did
Right.
it. Um, but and it just kind of made the book feel a little bit less convincing because they just happened to have this psychopath in the class, and not even in that kind of Mitsuko kind of way
Mm.
where she's just decided that she wants to play the game. It's like they go out of their way to say that he was a birth defect that has no emotions and is just like this cold-blooded psychotic. He's an athlete who can beat anyone up, or he can beat up like groups of kids who try to bully him. And well, they really hype him up to be this alpha psycho crazy loner kid, or not even a loner kid. I think he's like a gang leader in the book or something like that. Like they really hype him up.
Mm.
Um, and it's like, oh, of course they just happen to have that kid in the class, right? Whereas I think it just kind of
Yeah.
sells the realism, quote unquote realism. It just kind of sells the story a lot more to me, making him a transfer student who volunteered to take part in it. That's why he's there, because he is such a psycho sadistic character that he willingly took part.
No, absolutely. That really strengthens the story because it just, there's like the 1 in a million chance that your class would happen to have a complete psycho killer is ridiculous. So yeah, the movie did that way better. And I was gonna say now I get why you were saying that Mitsuko wasn't necessarily insane, because you're right. He's insane. She wants to win. Now I get what you're saying. Yeah, she has maybe she's detached from being able, with the fact that she can kill, so that takes something, sure, but like, he would be the one that's actually insane where they enjoy it.
Mhm.
So that's a good point. Yeah, that's strange in film. He again, he did an awesome job acting. Like, he had a presence on the screen. The only thing I wish for, in the beginning of this episode, we mentioned that he and Kawata were kind of like the bosses, even though Kawata turned out good. One thing, probably the only thing I could critique from this film, honestly, off the top of my head, was I was hoping that their final showdown, let's say, would have been a little longer or cooler.
Mm.
There was fire. They shot through flames. That was kind of cool. But I don't know. They were, from the get go. From that first time they're all gathered together. That these two are different and kind of extra confident badasses. So I was hoping their showdown would be a little cooler. But mostly just glad Koala won.
Yeah, I think this is kind of something that we will slightly disagree on. I probably wouldn't have minded if it was made a little bit cooler, but I think it was still just good as it was, because I think it was, I think it would have elevated it to an action movie if they had a more climactic final encounter. But the fact that it was just so,
That's true.
here it happens, it just made it seem just so much more down to earth and grounded.
That's true. No, you're right. You're right. I'm glad you said that, because that changes my mind on the critique. You're right, because it's like, careful what you wish for, because you're right. If they did take it too far, it would have been a blatant showdown. And I keep praising its realism. That would have ruined that.
Because
Yeah,
I like that there's no real action scenes. Like, even though there's so much death, there's no real action scenes. Like, that's the closest thing we really get, is just like the showdown between, or the face off between Kiriyama and Kawata. And that's really all it is. Because like, even when Kiriyama kills Mitsuko, it was like a surprise attack at first, and the rest was her just like fighting for dear life as he finally guns her down. It's like not even really like, it's not even an action scene. It's just, that's just what would happen. Like, she was just so determined that she was not going down. He just like unloaded a clip into her before she finally just, her body gave out and she wasn't able to fight anymore. And but even then, the whole scene only took like 10 or 15 seconds or something like that, because it was just literally a surprise attack, and then she has just enough life in her left to give a struggle before she dies.
Right.
Another one of the things that really hit me, even like the very first time I saw this movie, like I actually remember how much it just I just, it's hard for me to admit this because it just made me smile so hard. And it's one of those things that elevates it above the book. uh, because it's like just this stylistic choice that you can only do in a movie. You can't do it in a book, in which from the moment the first kid dies, the text comes up on the screen and they're doing a death tally and a countdown to how many kids are left.
Ah.
And was that in your version?
It was. It
Okay.
was. Yeah. I kind of didn't. I don't think I realized what that was until you said it just then.
So yeah. So and I think just as soon as I came up, I was just like, oh my god, like this is just going to go balls to the wall. Like this. Excuse me. I still have that cough. This is just committing. Like this. It just sent a chill down my spine. I just couldn't help but smile. Just it wasn't even like a proper in the game death. I think not think, I know one of the girls is talking during the tutorial or whatever you want to call it, um the beginning when they're teaching everyone the rules of the game. The girl's talking, so the teacher takes a knife and throws it at her head and kills her like on the spot. And then the words come up on the screen saying like, this girl's dead, 41 to go. And I just lost it. I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe they're going this far with it. Like, this is amazing how much they're just like doing this.
Yeah, that gave me a huge stupid grin. I was like, there's even a kill count? This is awesome. And how they just numbered them, like girl number 6 dead. I'm like, oh my god. That was so cool. And for me, I think it was prior to that, but it might not have been. But the first time it really hit me, what wasn't a death, it was just when he just strikes someone right in the face.
Yeah.
Because, the movie's still fresh. It's just getting started. They're blatantly children, especially innocent looking in them outfits. And then he just walks up and just fucking strikes them down right in the face. I'm like, oh, right there. They're punching kids around. There's something almost more violent about punching a kid on film than anything else because it's so raw. You're just like, God damn. All right. You just belted him right in the fucking gams. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said it in the beginning of this episode best. They committed. They did not let go. And that's why it was awesome.
And the kill count was actually, it's great that they started right away and they did it consistently. There's not a single death that they left behind in the kill count, or kill count down, I should say. And I think that really added so much to the movie because you get to see how far away, or how close you're getting to the final little bit. And, obviously when you get to the point where it's just, there is a point where it's just everyone's dead and it says 4 to go. And those are the 4 people. Those are like the 3 protagonists and the antagonists. That's all that's left. And then the 3 protagonists are just outside where a big explosion happened, and then you see the Kiriyama coming up out of the flames. And because there's no question that anyone else might be alive. It's like, no, there's 4 left. Those are the 4 people right now on screen in the same area. This is the moment. And just like, it just nailed it. Every little bit. There's no misstep. Everything was deliberate and everything just added and it just nailed it out of the park. And there's a lot more information that's given in the book, but it didn't have that just guttural, like, punch in the stomach that the movie gave me.
Yes. Yeah, it was awesome. Because, when it's flashed 4 left, like, even though I think I kind of knew, I still stopped really quickly just to take, or maybe it was when it said 8 left or whatever, I just stopped and took inventory. I'm like, so wait, is he still out there? Oh, fuck, he is. And then, like you said, then it switches to 4. You kind of look down at the 4, you look back up, and you're like, holy shit, they're all together. Like, this is going down. And speaking of relentless and committed to murdering as many children as possible in this film, I really liked the little subplot with the hackers. And the reason I loved it is because there's that part of me that's used to, let's say, I guess, Hollywood films as opposed to this crazy shit. And and being used to that, you're like, there's no way they're gonna kill all the kids. There's gonna be a lot of blood, but there's got to be somewhat of a victory at the end where, like, most of them get away or half of them, whatever. There's gonna be that. Like, there's no way they're gonna just off 38 of the 41 kids, whatever. Well, of course, at the time you think one's going to survive, but I love that story because it was such a well masked diversion where I was
Mhm.
like, "Is this it?" Like, at no point was I convinced, but I was hoping not. I'm like, please don't be this hacking thing, and then their collars come off, and then like these 10, 12 kids that are
Oh
left.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, and but again, the movie's buckled down. It's it's just sat bolt upright. It's like, no, we are killing as many kids as possible. I assure you, don't worry.
Yeah.
Their efforts are futile.
Um, and I guess as we're wrapping this up or coming close to the end here, at least, I also love that it's a bittersweet ending. Like it's kind of not even really that sweet either. So Kawada dies after rescuing them. They become fugitives. Battle Royale hasn't been stopped or anything. It's still going to happen. It's just these two
Right.
happen to survive, and now they're on the run from the law for the rest of their lives. The only thing I'm going to say to the ending is do not watch the sequel because there is a sequel. I feel bad even bringing it up. Um, I owned the disc because I bought it sight unseen, and for a good 10 years, I used it as a doorstop in my apartment. It was I literally, you can ask friends of mine who've been to my apartment because when I let them in, I live in an apartment, so I got to buzz them in the first door. And when they get up to the door of my unit, they will find my door propped open by having the Battle Royale 2 DVD wedged into between the door and the floor.
Wow, no mercy kill. You're like, no, the death penalty would be too kind to you. You're gonna live this one out in solitude, mate.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want the DVD that it's printed on to think about what it did.
If it strays from the door, I will step on it, just to remind it it's shit. Gave that CD a bloody complex. I will say that level of disdain for what is an inanimate object is so passionate and impressive that it's made me almost want to watch the second one just to see how a man could hate a film so much. Not by any means thinking it would be good, but just to see how something gets on that level of shit listed.
All I'm going to say is this. If you do watch it, we are not going to do an episode on it because that would require me to watch it again, and I am never going to watch that movie again.
No, I think I'm gonna let it go because I if it was like a remake that sucks, that'd be different. But the fact that they're gonna potentially carry the story on, I don't want that. I want it to end where it is now. Because like you said, it has a cool dystopian ending. Like you said, they don't even unlike the ones that blatantly kind of ripped it off in my opinion, like Hunger Games. They don't even get into the politics or tearing down the system. They just have to fucking survive. So they leave. The program's still happening, and I just when the credits rolled for me. I just had a feeling they were fucked. It was like
Yeah, basically.
wanted by like yeah. I mean, I could imagine a good scenario for them if I want to, but ultimately like the whole nation's probably looking for them on murder and this and that. So
Mhm. And
they're
that's
probably
basically like the
fucked.
theme of the movie, right? It's just their lives will
Yeah.
always be haunted, and their lives will always be like challenge after challenge thrown in front of him because like, his entire life has just been that, and it's not ever going to stop. And it's just that kind of like depressing ending that's just sort of like, well, that's the end of this story anyways. See you later, guys. And it's like there is no
Yeah.
happily ever after.
And he had a cool line towards the end of the film where he said, even though I'm not even good at it, I just have to keep fighting. And I
Yeah.
thought that was a cool line as far as like that's how life is, where it's like, so many people obviously, I think we all most of the time feel like we're not, good at things or good at life in general.
Hmm.
Put my hand up. Um, but, it's that cool kind of like humility behind it where it's like, you don't even have to be good at it, but you do have to do it. And that's
Yeah,
that's
good
that's
point.
what life is. So it was pretty cool little tie-in.
So any final thoughts on Battle Royale?
No, I mean, thank you for recommending it. I think is my final thought. That was an awesome experience. One of the coolest movies I've ever seen.
Now, I'm going to, for my final thought, and you can say anything at the end of this if you need to add anything in. But my final thing is in regards to Battle Royale games. I actually did think for a very long time, what it would be like to have a game based on a premise like Battle Royale, and this is like 10 years before they actually happened, or something like that. I don't know when the first one was. I have still not really played officially an actual battle royale game because it suddenly occurred to me as soon as they actually started making them or at least as far as they became popular. And I'd see just little clips of people playing it. I was like, okay, you know what? It's the premise is only a small part of what made Battle Royale interesting to me. It was about the characters, it was about the stakes, it was about the relationships, none of which you get in a video game, or at
Yeah.
least a multiplayer online video game. It's like you're not going to get that. There's this like, if you die, you just start a new game. It's like there's no stakes in any of this. Everything that I love about the movie will be completely devoid and absent in a battle royale game, and that's why I just like, yeah, you know what? People have fun with it. It's very popular. I'm not criticizing that. Go ahead and do whatever you think is fun, but I can't muster up the motivation to get into something like this because I already don't really like online multiplayer interaction to begin with, and just this seems like if it's basically just everyone for themselves and there's no cooperation, that's just kind of, I know that was the spirit of Battle Royale, but characters had to get pushed into that mind frame a lot of the time. You know, a lot of people didn't want to do it. A lot of people had, you know, when you're faced with that situation with people that you grew up with, it's going to be different from going through the situation with somebody in a different country that you've never met in your life who's saying that he slept with your mom, you know?
Yeah, that was nice. Well done. Very well. Slow clap. So that's the perfect point. I agree. Not being a fan of those games, not critiquing them. It's your life. Have fun. Do what you want. I encourage it, mate. But for me, it's not my thing. And like you said, what those games don't have, it sounds cool on paper, but it turns into just another way to fight online or on a game because there's none of the consequence of the story.
Yes,
like you said, stakes. There's no, all the backstory, all the greatest part of this movie is the human emotion behind it all, like the human experience of a story like this, like
absolutely, 100%.
What a person would go through, and then the different types of personality traits dealing with it, and yeah, when you strip the soul from it, like yeah, I mean you could, if you're not into like fighting face to face like a Mortal Kombat, then try fighting in a bush. That's cool, and do what you want. but that's all it is. It's just a fighting shooting game in bushes now. Yeah. And that's cool. I'm sure it is. Literally, I'm not. That sounded even more condescending. I'm trying to make it sound nice. Just do what you want, all right?
I support the premise of the game. I think it makes for a very interesting, or if not possibly fun, video game. I haven't played it. I don't know if it's fun or not. But like I said, it's not. Even if I derive any enjoyment out of playing the game, and let's assume that I do. Let's say it becomes like my favorite game. It's going to be for very different reasons from why Battle Royale is my favorite action movie of all time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, even an amazing game wouldn't be able to live up to it anyway. Holding it in that high of a regard.
All right, well, you know what? I'm really glad you got to see it. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, possibly as much as I did. I'm not sure if it's possible for very many people to enjoy this movie as much as I did. Like I said, I'm not sure. It's one of those weird things. I'm not sure if I would name it in like my top 10 definitive movies of all time, but I'm pretty sure it's like my number one favorite action movie of all time. I can't think of, and I can think of some great action movies like, Aliens, Predator, some really awesome action movies. And and even if I grew up watching those and loving those and like wanting to be, characters in those movies, a lot of those movies are what inspired me to become who I am, but more of a loser in real life. But even still, there was something about Battle Royale that just kind of puts it just a little bit higher. And I think it was just such an amazing experience. It wasn't just watching something cool. It was like this whole journey of emotions and a whole journey through a classroom full of emotions.
It felt like observing a scientific experiment more than a film. Like it was just so fascinating to watch this all play out. Yeah, bloody ant farm.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Yeah. Thanks for the recommendation.
So thank you for finally watching it. I'm really glad you liked it. And that being said, thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed Battle Royale, the movie. I hope this is your favorite podcast of all time.
Everyone be safe out there. Don't do murders, or do whatever you want, but don't tell anyone that I suggested that you should, or that it's okay. just in general, goodbye. All right.